Welcome to Blue is the New White, the #1 podcast for building blue-collar business.
You know that for our industry to grow, our businesses have to grow. In order for our businesses to grow, our people have to.
Here, we talk to experts in any field with actionable insight that you can use to develop yourself, your team, or your blue-collar company right now.
Fortune favors action. It's just as simple as actually taking that step forward.
Whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting started, join us to discover the blueprint for what it takes to stand out in the world of business. Now, blue-collar CEO and business coach, author, speaker, and your host, Josh Zolin.
And you guys know how I'm going to end it, right? Say it with me. Let's go to work on 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's go to work!
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. So marketing is such a buzzword these days, am I right? Digital marketing, SEO, pay-per-click, retargeting, podcast reviews, funnels. Who can keep track of it all? And let's face it, if you're a business owner and not a marketer by trade, it's easy to get overwhelmed with all these different strategies floating around the internet, which is why we speak today with Phil Risher of Phlash Consulting. Phil has experience in the trades when he helped a duct cleaning company 3 times their profits using the same strategies he implemented to grow his personal finance blog. Since then, he's grown his business to accommodate several large home services and blue-collar organizations. Listen in to hear several actionable strategies that you can implement in your business today that will help you get leads, get noticed, and grow your business. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and on our website at blueisthenewwhite.com to receive all the latest updates. You can now find this podcast on iHeartRadio, SiriusXM, and Pandora. As always, we rely on word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So if you enjoyed this episode, please take a second to rate it, review it, and share it. The future generations of blue-collar business owners depend on it. They depend on you. Also, if you're looking to advance your blue-collar career or propel your business, be sure to check out the brand new Blue is the New White Academy offering coaching and courses at bitnew.academy. That's bitnw.academy. Thank you again and enjoy this episode of Blue is the New White with Phil Risher. I've got a special guest for you today. I was actually just on his show not too long ago, and he's a super cool guy, incredibly knowledgeable in this field of marketing, especially in the blue-collar industries, home services industries. So, Phil Risher, man, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited about this conversation. I think that we're going to be able to find a ton of gold nuggets here that business owners can take away and maybe even implement in their businesses as soon as possible.
Oh, 100%. I completely agree.
Cool, man. Cool. So for starters, for those who don't know you, can you kind of just give us an overview on who you are, where you come from and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. Phil Risher, based outside of Washington, D.C., owner of Phlash Consulting. We partner with local service businesses and we help them increase their sales, keep their schedules full. Typically, we're helping companies grow 10, 20%. My background, when I came out of college, I was at Enterprise renting cars. I went through their management trainee program. So I was running a local service business. I ended up getting into fleet management and I was selling fleet management services for Enterprise. So I was selling to large HVAC contractors, 20 plus fleets of vehicles, cold calling and the whole sales process. At the same time, I had started a blog about personal finance, and that was a big part of who I am. And the blog ended up taking off and I got featured in Forbes and CNBC and some other cool stuff. And so I learned SEO and all that. And I left Enterprise and I went and traveled around the country in a school bus, actually.
What?
And, I was doing some YouTube videos and influencer stuff, like that kind of stuff. And when I came back into town, one of my clients was a duct cleaning company. And he was like, hey, man, I need a director of business development. And could you come work with me? And he was $2 million. I went and worked there and literally all my worlds collided. Like my sales experience from Enterprise, running a local service business from Enterprise, my digital marketing background, it all just came to a head. And I went to his business, and for the first year of working there, we literally 3x'd his profit and I've been working with them ever since, but just been scaling their stuff. And so at that point, after 1 year, he's telling all his friends, dude, you got to meet this guy, Phil. He's amazing. So he actually pushed me because I wasn't even making six figures at that point. And I'm like, hey, like we got to figure something out. He pushed me. I was like, go be a consultant, charge hourly and you'll make six figures. And he kind of introduced me to our first couple clients. That was about 5 years ago. And it's been like that ever since. We've just been helping companies.
Dude, that's awesome. I love it. So out of curiosity, what did you go to school for?
So I went to college for international business. I did not necessarily even know what I was doing. I went in initially for finance because I like personal finance. Then I switched to management. Then they said, hey, you could study abroad. You just need to switch your major to international business. I was like, sign me up. So I literally switched my major because of that. I was in the, first in your generation to go to college, pushed in kind of like take out student loans. I took out about 30,000 in student loans. I knew Dave Ramsey at the time because I went through Financial Peace University in high school. And when I came out of college, I came out swinging so hard. It was crazy. Like I didn't live with my dad growing up. I moved into his basement and I lived in his basement and I paid off 30,000 in 1 year. And so I was like, I didn't want to be held over by debt, but that was something that I was really passionate about, was getting out of debt because, you're trapped in a major or career that you don't like.
Yeah. How did you pay off that? I mean, what was the process in paying off that $30,000 in 1 year? Obviously, you were living in your dad's basement, which is a pretty big part of it. But like, there's got to be strategy behind it. Can you talk a little on that?
Yeah, for sure. So I was making about $48,000 a year at Enterprise, and so decent amount. I was working like 70 hours a week, just like busting my butt.
Yeah.
And I told my dad, hey, for the first year, I can't pay any rent, but I'll do whatever. Like I'll be an on-call babysitter. I'll cut the grass. I'll do the laundry. I'll do whatever. And he was like, okay, that's fine. So basically it was, I need to pay off $30,000. So $2,500 every single month. I'm sticking that towards my loans. If I have $500 left, like that's all that I get for gas or food or whatever. And so that was the game plan. What ended up happening was I was at Enterprise. I ended up becoming a branch manager. So I started making more money. And after the first year of paying off my loans, I started paying a little bit in rent. And then I saved up for the next 2 years, about $60,000. And I bought my condo with cash when I was 25. So basically those principles, I just like stuck to them. I was like, okay, well, this helped me here. And so that's how I got to starting the blog, was because my wife is a kindergarten teacher and they have a lot of student loans. They don't make a lot of money. So all her friends were like, hey, how did you do this? How did you do this? And so I was like, let me just make a blog and like share this stuff. So that's kind of how I got into the whole digital marketing realm.
Dude, that's pretty cool. So speaking of getting into the digital marketing realm, that happened once you joined your friend's business as the director of business development. Is that right? Or did it happen a little before that?
Yeah. So the blog that started in 2015, I started a blog, and basically I had no idea. I didn't know what WordPress was. I didn't know what MailChimp was. I knew nothing, literally nothing, because I was international business. I was running a business, I knew how to like push sales and teach your team how to sell and give good service. So then I started learning WordPress and all this other stuff and SEO. And I started to realize, wait a sec, if I get featured in these articles, like they'll give me backlinks and then I'll get more traffic to my site and then I can convert them into email subscribers, or like I can have affiliate partners and like I could cross sell other things. So then it was like, well, what can I get featured in? And that's when I got featured in Forbes and all these other things and on TV and stuff. And I was just all about driving traffic to my site, basically.
Oh, wow. Okay. So talk to us a little bit. I know we're building to what you're doing today, right? But talk to us a little bit about the strategy behind being able to get featured in these things. Was it outreach? Was it just making yourself visible? Was it, knowing people in the right spaces? What was it?
Yeah, I'll give you two strategies. The first one is, I used to read a lot of articles, and I think anyone that is a high achiever, they have a story, and they read articles and they're like, man, this is a good story, but like, I think my story is like pretty good too. And so basically what I would do is I would read a story. I'm like, okay, that's good. And I would find the author of the story, whether it was in CNBC, Forbes, whatever. And I would go on Twitter and I would tweet at them and I would look for their email and I would email them. And I'd be like, in the subject line, I would put the article. I'll say, hey, I read this article about such and such. If you're ever looking for another great story to feature, here's an evergreen content piece. And I would basically share my thing. And then they would eat it up, because most writers or people that are looking for content, they're looking for great stories. And if someone comes to them and puts it in their lap and says, here's a great story, they're going to love it. And then I had a bunch of different unique ones. Like I paid off student loans, bought a condo with cash, traveled around the country in a school bus. So I could pitch a bunch of different things that they could layer onto different stories, So they had a bunch of different stories they could share. So that was the first strategy. The second one is this free resource called Haro, Help a Reporter Out.
Yep, I got that one.
Yeah, and that one, I got on some smaller articles, and then I would tweet at the business owner of those articles, and then try to like flip it into more and bigger stuff.
Huh. That's interesting. It's exactly what I'm looking for, man. That kind of stuff is, it's not talked about enough, but like that's real life strategy. That's something that you figured out and that you found success in doing. And that's awesome. And then the result obviously is that you're featured, you direct all this traffic to your website, and your blog just climbs the ranks.
Exactly. So what I would do when I got featured in Forbes, then I would go to all the local news stations and radio shows, and I'd be like, hey, a local guy was just featured in Forbes. Maybe you should have me on to talk about it. And then I would go to the next thing and just like keep flipping it. And yes, the goal is just to ultimately drive so much traffic to my website that I get all these email subscribers, get these affiliate links, start making all this money.
So would you reach out as you, or would you reach out like as a third person? You would just reach out as you.
Yeah. Like I would say, hey, I'm Phil. I'm locally here. I just got featured in this thing. Maybe it'd be a cool story for us to share in our community. That's
cool, man. You know what? There's a very fundamental principle in there, I think. Something along the lines of, if you want something, you got to friggin' ask for it, right? And I think it's muddied today in some of the different strategies. I guess maybe call it information overload. We live in the digital age where we just have more information coming at us than we know what to do with it. Most of the information is conflicting. Right. I mean, you can find an opposing article to any article that you ever read. Right. So experience is really the best teacher. And sometimes we lose sight of the fact that, to this point, right. I mean, if we do want something, the first step sometimes is just ask for it. Don't try to go around it. Don't try to sugarcoat it or beat around the bush. Just ask. Right. Yeah.
My favorite quote is, if you want something bad enough, you'll find a way. If not, you'll find an excuse.
Yeah.
And it's like, how bad do you really want this? Are you finding excuses, or are you finding a way? Because that's what it comes down to. If you find a bunch of excuses, you probably don't want it bad enough.
That's a good point. I like that. We might use that one as a clip. But no, that's cool, man. All right, cool. So let's fast forward a little bit. You joined your buddy's business. You 3x'd his profits, which is pretty impressive. That's awesome. Yeah. At what point did you say, okay, well, it's time for me to go out and do this on my own?
Yeah. So what we found was, in his business, he was a duct cleaning company focusing on building relationships with HVAC contractors and getting referrals into his business. And he was giving them a cutback, which is fine. What we found in his business was that every single time you get those jobs, you're going to be losing 10 or 20% on the job because you're giving them a cutback. So why don't you go and actually layer in all of the COD residential stuff on top of those referrals that you're getting? Because those, you don't have to pay $100, $200 every single job. It's basically free if you do it right from an organic perspective. And that was really the pivotal turning point, because now I had this whole arsenal of SEO, on-site, off-site, retargeting, all this stuff that I could deploy and basically come up with all these strategies and help him grow his business. So I would say I was about 8 or 9 months in, and we were literally crushing his stuff. He was a 25-year-old business, and he's like, a godsend, basically coming to help him. And he was at lunch with one of his friends. His friend's like a carpet cleaning company, telling his friend's like, can you bring him to lunch? I want him to come over to my leadership meetings. He was running a traction. He's like, I want him to come to my L10 meetings. I want him to like share all the stuff that you're doing over there. And so that was kind of the point where I was like, okay, I could see how this might work and I could help people.
That's pretty wild, dude. That's cool. If I was a journalist, I would get you a story too. Honestly, no, that's pretty cool. So then you decided to make this a business of your own.
That's right. Obviously. So what happened at that point was we were working with a digital marketing company, kind of like the bigger PE backed marketing companies, sure. And I was getting frustrated as a director of business development because they didn't get into my CRM. They didn't really know my reports or what we actually do. They kind of just like looked at their fluff reports and they didn't actually like tie the two together. That was really a game changer for us, was that I had the background from enterprise, which was we got paid off our bottom line of our branch. So I knew what the metrics were to look at to help move those things. Like how many leads did we get year over year? How many estimates did we do year over year? How many new customers did we get year over year? So I could pull those numbers in our CRM, and then I could line them up with what was our cost per lead from a digital marketing perspective. And I knew all that stuff too. So that was kind of my thought process, which is why I called it Phlash Consulting, because I thought like we could have a team of consultants that partners with companies that do all this research and data. And then what the real emphasis of this whole thing was, I was only making about, and we talked about this when I interviewed you, I was only making about like $80,000, and the head technicians at the company were making $120,000.
Yeah.
And I see the profit, I see the revenues, and I'm like, man, I definitely need to be making over six figures, like with the impact that I'm making. So then the idea was, okay, well, why don't you go be kind of like a fractional consultant with like 3 different companies? Maybe you get paid, $50, $60 an hour, and you make over 100,000, and you're basically using all these tools to help companies. And that was kind of like how it got started.
Sure. That's cool. So you actually started, it sounds like, with the blessing of your friend while working at his company.
He literally set me up with the 2 other companies. So I had 3 clients. He actually named the company Phlash Consulting.
That's amazing. See, listen, I want to stop here for another lesson, specifically in my industry. Okay. Yeah. And granted, you weren't a technician. I hear this all the time about technicians, right? You weren't a technician, but you were very valuable in the business. And there's an old mindset out there, right, that is really resistant to that type of thing, right? And the thought process is, I've invested in you, I've trained you, I've given you these resources, I've given you this opportunity, and you're going to take it somewhere else, right? And I just want to point out that, although I understand the sentiment behind that, that's not the day and age that we live in. Literally, people can go and make Wi-Fi money, by creating courses or selling articles or, Gumroad and all these different things. People can make money doing almost anything today in this day and age. So the skilled trades, the blue collar world, we're not up against the other blue collar companies. We're up against every single industry that exists, right? So my point in saying that is maybe it's time we create an environment conducive to allowing people to succeed in their own way.
You're absolutely right. And I even want to give the cherry on top of this, which I still work with that company to this day. That's cool. And we took his business from, let's say, $3 million to about $5-ish million. I was involved in the process. He actually ended up selling it to PE. And he had a great, amazing exit with a multiple that is amazing for a duct cleaning company. And when we first started together, it wasn't even fathomable to ever have this outcome. But he did the right thing by me, and ultimately I did the right thing by him, and everyone was happy at that point. So to your point, it's like if you and people are going to leave after 2 or 3 years. Like, I know the impact I'm making. I know that I could go somewhere else and make 100,000. So why not come up with a win-win, which this guy did for me?
And that's the key word right there, win-win, right? And listen, I've had it in my business, right? I have a very traditional commercial HVAC, refrigeration, and kitchen equipment business. I've had technicians leave to start their own companies, and I've supported that, right? And I've had some that have been successful, and they thank me 1,000 times over. And I've had some that have not been successful, and they've come back with a new fire and a new pride for what they do for me as employees and as technicians, because they appreciate it that much more. So to me, in my mindset, it's really win-win, But again, I think that it's kind of been ingrained in these industries over the years. So anyway, I don't want to harp on that. We can move forward, but I just thought that was a great example to kind of pick apart. So I want to. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so kind of what happened was I had those 3 companies, and then the 4th one I got referred to because we were doing a great job. And I'm like, I don't have more than 40 hours to give to people, and I can't charge hourly for my services. So then I started to figure out, well, what exactly do I do? If I could distill this down to like 10 or 15 like core things that we do. And I built like a productized service that then I could sell, and then build a team to do that thing. And from that point forward, that's basically how we run the business now.
That's cool. And did you train that team from the ground up exactly how you do it? Or did you find people who already knew how to do that thing and then just plug them in?
Yeah, so great question here. With digital marketing, there's so many moving parts. Like, you got to have nerds that know, like how to move, how to like super technical stuff. You got to have people that know how this looks aesthetically. And to be honest, it is very, very silly for someone to think that one person can do digital marketing for an entire company. Like it's a bear to know what exactly to do. So what I did was I went out and I vetted out a ton of digital marketing companies, and I found one particularly that does all the right things that I wanted. And I told them, hey, I'm going to be building this productized service. I want to plug you in as an arm to do all this, the nerd stuff. And I want you guys to be able to be a part of our company. I'm going to do what we do great over here, and we're going to build together on this. So every client that I bring on, I'm going to bring on these services. I'm going to work with this person. Like, are y'all cool with that? And they said, yeah.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
Basically, I built a productized service, but I brought in other pieces. Like at one point I had Podium as a partner. So then all our clients, we would bring on Podium, for example, or different pieces that I knew would be game changers in their business.
Oh, that's great. That sounds like an awesome model. Definitely, one that can allow you to scale. I mean,
that was the thing, is that allowed me to scale up and down without having the cash flow pinch of bringing
overhead.
on over.
Yeah. I mean, that's ideal. I hope everybody out there is paying attention, because there's some gold nuggets in just the business strategy. We haven't even really talked about marketing yet, but the business strategy that Phil is talking about right now, just keep your ears open, because there's a lot of stuff that you're saying that people can implement in their business. And I know different style businesses, but some of the fundamentals and principles are shared.
Yeah, we see this all the time, like your HVAC and you want to get into generators or hot water heaters or something, and you don't have the exact expertise in-house, but you're like, we can do it. Like, it's going to get some more big tickets that we can cross-sell. Where like, if you just layer in a partnership with an electrical contractor that specializes in generators, for example, that doesn't do HVAC, then you can still do the service without actually doing the service. And maybe you have a reciprocating relationship back and forth.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of validity to that. So I appreciate you mentioning it. I am curious, I think a good tangible, I should say just good tangible advice that we could probably extract from you today are, because marketing companies are just rampant, right? They are everywhere now. Everybody has a marketing company, and everybody's the best in the world at it. Right?
Yeah.
People listening can't see me doing air quotes right now, but I am doing that hard. But anyway, what are some red flags? Like, if you're say you're a small business, maybe 10 employees or whatever, you're looking to scale, you want to partner with a marketing company, you don't really know where to start, you're interviewing a bunch of them because that's probably the right way, but what are some things that some business owners out there can look for, responses that they can identify, or questions they can ask, that could be red flags and say, oh, maybe I shouldn't use this company?
Yeah. So the number one thing that I always tell people to do is, if you're in the home service space, we all know Google reviews are super important. If you're working with a marketing company that has 0 Google reviews, what are they doing? They don't know what they're doing, because they don't even have Google reviews for their own business. Now, they're not maybe a local business, but if they're going to tell you and teach you how to do things, they got to do stuff on their own, in my opinion. What does their email marketing look like? What do their blog content look like? What do their service area pages look like? And this is something that you could find without even asking them. Just go and do some research on their website. So that's like the first thing I usually tell people. See if they have Google reviews. If they don't have Google reviews, something's wrong. Second to look for is, I always want to tell people, like, ask this question: how are you going to track your progress and evaluate progress? A lot of times people use like the fluff stuff, like impressions or click-through rates and this kind of thing. Ideally, this is why we're a consulting company, is because you would want someone to go into your CRM and pull the reports for you. Most business owners, they don't really know what they're looking at in their reports. Maybe they have a couple reports that they curated, but like the main ones are, how are you going to track new customers? Because it's great to get returning customers, and that is a part of growing your business, but everyone wants new customers. And a lot of times you get, clicks from Google ads and stuff, but they're all returning customers. So how are you going to track new customers specifically? If you use a CRM, most of them have a report for that. So how are you going to track that? How are you going to track growth year over year? So this could be like what we do. We go into their CRM, we pull the number of leads they got last year. And then this year, however many leads we got year over year, we're sending them a report, and we're literally meeting with them saying, wait, we're down. You said you want to grow 20%, but we're actually down. So what's going on? We do estimates and jobs. Those are kind of like the core ones. So like, how are you going to track your progress? That's really important. And and more so in the collaborative approach. I think a lot of times business owners fall into the trap of they listen to a podcast and they say, oh, I got to run Facebook ads, or I got to do a Google business profile. I need to optimize my Google business profile. So they go and they find a company that just optimized the Google business profile without seeing the big picture of marketing of how this affects what is happening. They're just looking for like the service and the service to do instead of like a holistic plan, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that's some really good advice. I appreciate that. Because listen, I mean, most business owners, they know enough to be dangerous, but that's it. And so when they're interviewing these companies, and I've seen it firsthand, right? They just don't know what questions to ask. Like, I had mentioned I sit on a board for an association, right? And they actually, I was heading up some of the marketing efforts. We were actually looking for a marketing firm to partner with for the first time in a very long time. And so we set up all these interviews, right? And one of the common trends that I noticed, and we didn't select anybody who did this, was they kept talking about impressions. We're going to get 1 million impressions. We're going to get 2 million impressions, and we're going to guarantee 1 million views. And I'm like, that scene in Tommy Boy jumped in my head. Like, I can shit in a box and mark it guaranteed. Yeah,
Exactly.
But I just told you a guaranteed piece of shit. Like, it's I think that sometimes, and the reason I ask this question is that, when there's terms used that people aren't familiar with or that just don't know, that it's very easy to get sucked in that trap of, wow, well, that sounds pretty legit, when it's in fact just not.
That's right. Because an impression in Phoenix, let's say you're in Florida and you get all your impressions in Phoenix, like who cares? Your clients are in Florida. So that doesn't matter at all. It matters about your lead flow, your estimates, your conversions. Another thing that's really important is in your sales calls, what they should not do is pull up a slide deck and tell you about themselves. What they should do is do an audit for you, an audit of what you're currently doing. So like what we do, we go through their website, we audit their title tags, meta descriptions, H1s, like all the stuff on their website. We audit their offsite stuff. And then we literally say like, hey, your call to action here is off. This is why you're not converting enough leads. So like you should have a heart of a teacher. The philosophy that I always like to say is you give the recipe and you sell the cooking. If someone is like giving you the recipe and then they're saying like, yeah, you could pay us to do it, that's the people that you want to work with, not the people that are showing you all the glitz and glimmers that are just fluffing it.
I love that approach. And I call that functional selling. And I don't remember where I learned it, somewhere in a book that I read at one point, I'm sure. But you're right. It's the philosophy of, and I think it was a story, right? It was like this large agency couldn't understand why they were losing so much business to the smaller agency when they were out, they were beating them in price, they were beating them in offerings, they were beating them in almost every category, but they just kept losing customers to this smaller company. And it was exactly that. This smaller company would walk into the meeting and they wouldn't pitch about themselves. They would say, let me look at what you have. Let's use this meeting to do some work together. And inevitably, there's I think there's a cognitive bias that backs this too. But inevitably, your potential customer is going to want to choose you because you're the one that's already put in some effort for them.
Exactly. So like, let's think about this for the trades. Let's say someone calls you and says, hey, can you give me an estimate on a new boiler or whatever? You go out there and you give them the estimate. Well, what can you do to educate that customer? So beforehand, you could send them like a pricing guide for that service. You could send them the 5 frequently asked questions for that thing. After the fact, on your nurture sequence, after the estimate goes out, you could load them up with educational things. And it's all about educating the customer because you're the subject matter expert. And that's what's going to help you stand out, to your point, is how can you give them the most value out of this without getting anything in return?
Yeah, no, exactly. Well said. So no, very, very good information there. I appreciate that. I hope everybody out there is listening and taking notes. Take notes. All right. Can't say I didn't tell you. All right, good. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, you kind of said it a couple of times. And, I'm a little familiar with it. I kind of understand the premise behind it. But as an educational piece for the listeners out there, you've mentioned retargeting, right?
Yeah.
And so can we talk just a little bit around what retargeting means and how that can be beneficial?
Yeah. So this is really how companies grow. And this is really the biggest misunderstanding, in my opinion, from our industry, is that they all think like, oh, I'm just going to pay $30,000 in ads and I'm going to get all these customers. And that's great to put into the funnel up top. But really what happens is when they come through your funnel and they get to that sale, now you need to retarget them and bring them back into your funnel. And that's the real snowball that keeps spinning, because they might come in for, maintenance or repair on their furnace or whatever. And then you retarget them because now you're cross-selling ductless systems. And so you're keeping the snowball spinning while then you're adding stuff on top. So what is retargeting? It's basically taking all your prospects and customers, prospects that didn't convert through your funnel, and you're putting them into a big blue ocean, usually it's a honey hole gold mine of 10, 20,000 people plus. And then you're going to be retargeting them in like an email newsletter. So you're going to be emailing them something or some special offers. You're going to do text message marketing to them saying like, hey, it's slow right now for us, so we have a $25 off voucher for something. If you're interested, let me know and I'll stick one aside from you. Or an email cross-selling a ductless system or something else. And that part of the equation is they already know, like, and trust you. So you need to get in front of them and then retarget them to bring them back into your funnel.
Yeah, that's probably the best description I've heard. So nice work on that. Thank you. Actually, I understand that a little bit better now too. But that's really helpful. And it's a term that's being thrown around more and more too. So I thought, kind of giving some explanation behind it is probably a good thing, especially for people listening to this show. Okay, good. So then how does one go about, starting to retarget? Is this where you cross the line into like not doing it yourself and calling a company to come in and do it correctly? Is that?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example of a company that we work with. They were a $3 million HVAC contractor. They were looking to scale, and they ultimately did scale to 8 million, which we helped them with, and they sold to PE. So this company that scaled to 8 million, their whole bread and butter was with retargeting. And they brought us in, we did everything, but really the honey hole was retargeting. And what they did was they brought in plumbing and electrical. And their whole thing was, let's retarget our customers in HVAC and sell them generators, tankless water heaters, all that kind of stuff. So to answer your question of like, where do you get started with this? First, you have to have an entire database of people. A lot of times you'll have a CRM, whether it's ServiceTitan, House Call Pro, Jobber, or if you have like your QuickBooks and you have all their emails, you got to have some central place where you keep all your customers and prospects. Then you'll get all those emails out, and you could use a tool like MailChimp or something else. If you use ServiceTitan, they have Marketing Pro. There's a bunch of different ones, Infusionsoft. There's a bunch of different email marketing tools. You put them in there, and then you want to create an email newsletter every single month. And inside of that email, you really want like 4 things. You want to have something that adds value. And so this could be like, 5 things you need to focus on in April for your HVAC system, whatever. You want to do a social post. So maybe cross-sell something fun from social media. You want a proof of concept or case study. So you could just take a review, put it in there, and then you want to cross-sell something. So you want to cross-sell like what I mentioned before, ductless, furnace, whatever, something that you're highlighting. And then you want strong call to actions. And that's basically it. In your email newsletter, you want those 4 things. You can play around with it a little bit, but ideally, as you start to scale your business, it's more about who, not how, in my opinion. If you want to just keep focusing on these hows over and over again, you're just going to be, spread out. And so you got to find who's that you can trust and hold accountable, because to your point, you might know a little bit about marketing and what all goes into it, but are you a marketing guy or are you a business owner,
Right. At the end of the day, there's only so many hats a business owner can wear for so long.
Yeah. When we talk to companies, we're like, okay, are you looking for a who or a how? Because if you want the how, I'll give you the how. But if you're looking for a who, that's why you would hire a digital marketing company.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And that's very succinct and to the point. All right, cool. So just a couple more questions for you. We're starting to butt up against time here a little bit, but I'm curious, and I might put you on the spot here a little bit. So you talk a lot about home services and you use a lot of examples like boilers and, HVAC units and stuff like that, which is product oriented. What about for those businesses that are, let's play in the commercial space for a second, right? Where it's not necessarily so much about the product you're selling. It's about gaining the account as a whole and being the number one vendor they use for their recurrent services. Right? Do the same strategies that you're talking about today with retargeting and funnels and all that, do those same strategies apply? If not, what gets tweaked between product and service?
Yeah. So this is like the classic B2C versus B2B side of things. And so the B2C side of things is kind of what I'm saying, like search engine results page, Google business profile, right? The B2B side of things is a little bit different because there takes a sales acumen to that portion. A lot of times you're going to need a sales or account executive to be prospecting and nurturing that relationship. It's not as, oh, I Googled because I need a commercial mechanical contractor, and then they find you and they take all your services.
Yeah, right.
So there's a component of that. Typically, what we recommend from a B2B perspective is to be the go-to source in your industry, which I'm a B2B guy because I'm looking for HVAC. So I do podcasts. There's a really good book called Marketing to the Affluent. I don't know if I told you about that book.
You did. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm glad you brought it up again.
Okay, so Marketing to the Affluent, it's great for B2B. Basically, what he says is as you make more money, people work with you because of who you are, not what you do. And so if you can set your company up or yourself up as the go-to industry expert from a B2B perspective, all roads are going to lead back to you. And so that's why you want to get on industry podcasts. You want to get on industry newsletters. You want to have an industry newsletter, that kind of stuff. From a B2B perspective, that's what we've seen. One other really good note on this, I mentioned before about the duct cleaning company that was reaching out to HVAC contractors, and that was the bread and butter. There is a component to cold outreach to B2B partners. And typically what we recommend doing is this. We recommend doing an email that says partnership, and then it will say like, hey, I was looking for a good property manager to work with in the local area. Maybe we could, meet up and grab some coffee or chat, and just keep it very light. And you can send this out to all the property management companies, for example. And then you slowly, or commercial realtors or whatever. And basically you're just building your database of hopefully warm leads. And then you create a quarterly newsletter for these people. In that quarterly newsletter, now you're the industry expert and you're sharing the content that you're on. Like if I'm on this podcast, it's going to go in our newsletter, and you're sharing all this content. So then you really stand out as the expert. So people come back to you.
That is cool. And so I very much align with that. I didn't put it as neatly as you did, right? But that's kind of my philosophy is what I'm saying as well. Because it is a different animal, marketing B2C compared to B2B. And really what you're saying is in B2B, be the thought leader in your industry, be the one that people associate with good quality work or knowledge about the industry or teaching, helping, serving, whatever. Just make sure that you develop that brand, that reputation where people trust you before they meet you.
Exactly. That's something that I've really been focusing on for our business. Like we don't have salespeople that are like cold calling all these people. We're just like, we're the authority. We have a YouTube, podcast, all this stuff. And hopefully we attract people to come into our business and then they love us. And it's more like a farming than a hunting side of it.
Ah, that's good. That's a really good analogy. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. Okay, so I'm going to ask you the last question now, and I've changed up my last question a little bit since pivoting the podcast. So now, and I want you to give this some thought because it's very broad and it's that way for a reason, right? But from your perspective and from your expertise, what is one single thing that somebody could take away today, or one piece of advice that you have that somebody could implement to help grow their business right away?
The number one thing that you can do today is get Google reviews. The reason this is so important is twofold. First, from an organic perspective, Google reviews are like the holy grail on the Google Local Service Pack. And so you want to get as many Google reviews as you can. Second, if you're running Google Local Service ads, it's the second holy grail for Google Local Service ads because they're only going to show you in that section if you have enough Google reviews. So if you don't have enough Google reviews, you're going to show your competitor that has more Google reviews than you. That's kind of like an easy one. So I'm going to give you one other one. If you do not do retargeting and you have customers just sitting there that you've never talked to for years, you are literally missing out on 10xing your business by not doing that.
Retarget current customers or customers you have.
Anyone that's ever reached out to your company that's given you their email address, you should be touching them at least monthly.
That's a good one. All right. Awesome. Dude, thank you. That is that's fantastic. And I know that my listeners are going to have a field day with this episode. So before we jump off, before we say our goodbyes, I want to know, where can people find you?
Yeah, the best way, if we were talking about those audits and that kind of stuff, we do free marketing audits. We'll hop on a call with you for 30 minutes. We'll have our team on the back end do the audit. We'll roll through your entire company, and then we'll give you the game plan. We'll literally give you the recipe. If you want to work with us or not, that's all good either way. So you can go to phlashconsulting.com. It's PHLASH consulting.com. It'll say discuss your business. Just fill that out. And then, yeah, that's the best way to find us.
That's awesome. Phil, thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us today and sharing all that insight. I know that my listeners are going to appreciate the hell out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Josh, for having me on.
All right. Take care, bud. All right.
Thanks for listening to the Blue is the New White podcast. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. For more, please follow at Josh Zolan on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Or visit us at blueisthenewwhite.com, where we create success, not debt, and build blue-collar heroes.